Welcome to the Carleena Show, where ordinary people share their hero's journey. I'm your host, Carleena Angwin, and this is episode 11 of the podcast. Today on the show we have Veronica Slack. Veronica is the author of a recovery journal series, mother, and active member of a 12-step recovery program for over 27 years. Today's episode deals with mature subject matter that may be sensitive to some listeners. Veronica describes her unconventional childhood of being born in a mental institution to the abuse and addiction occurring in her Philadelphia home. She talks about the events that led her down a dangerous path of addiction she didn't think she could escape. But after several tries in her 20s, she did escape, and every cell of her being propelled her on a path to help others quit their addiction and find the support they need. At 45 years old, Veronica suffered a traumatic brain injury. She maintained her sobriety through the pain, though, and focused on getting a GED and enrolling in Chattanooga State Community College. She recalls fond memories of spending hours in the college disability office's soundproof box, the same place where she and I sat down to record her conversation today. At the end of the episode, stick around for footage of Unity on the Bridge, the recovery event where Veronica and I met a couple weeks ago, and the event she references at the end of our conversation. For Veronica's episode and contact information, visit our new website, carleena.net. That's CARLEENA.net. If you are watching our conversation on YouTube, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. You can help support The Carleena Show by telling your friends about it and giving us 5 stars on iTunes. One more thing, thank you Stephen Lorca for video editing and graphic design. Now I bring you Veronica Slack. I'm really excited to have you on the show, finally. Finally, I think we met, was it a week ago or maybe like a week and a half ago? On the bridge, yeah. So it was a recovery event, one of the first of its kind in Chattanooga, where people in recovery and family and just supporters came out, and so that's where we met, and then I invited you to come on the show because I heard a little bit about your story. So so I'm glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
Well, good. So how about you talk a little bit about like what you're doing right now, and then we'll go back and you can tell the story of your journey. So what are you doing right now?
Okay, well, what I'm doing is I'm the author of a recovery book series that provides creative long-term recovery support for any person. So with this book series right now, mostly all my time is spent in getting that out into the public. So I currently have the recovery journals in Silverdale Detention Center through the chaplain in there, and also at the Comprehensive Volunteer Treatment Center. I also teach a class there. So we have the recovery journals in there. People are using them, and it's just, this is my life's work. So so that's pretty much what I do. I spend my time.
How long ago did you write your book?
Well, I began writing the books back in probably 1999. So over the course of the last 19 plus years, I wrote this book series. And the series is for any person. And so the first publication, the first book 1, came out in 2001. And that was just a small version. And it went out there. But then I went on to do some other things in recovery. I did televised recovery. And that was a wonderful experience. So... Okay.
And
I continued writing through the years, so.
Okay. And then you're in the community doing classes too, in addition to
I just do the one class.
Oh, okay.
And what I do with that is we build what I call recovery boards from the class. I take from our daily meditations, we're going cover to cover through Journal 1, and I take them meditations, pull a lesson from it, and then we build a recovery board together as a class, and I post that to the website in efforts to reach people from all walks of life.
Okay.
So it's really, so I do a summary of it for afterwards, because I don't know, none of the people are on film.
Right,
But,
right. Okay. Okay. Well, really, that's cool. That's cool. And we'll get back to that, and you can talk more about how that all started and the relationships that you've made in the community, because I know you have a lot of really strong relationships. Um, how about we go back and tell me about your formative years and some of the events that stick out to you in your mind.
That's a lot of life.
Yeah.
So you mean like?
Let's just start when you were born, because I did read your the book that's posted online. I read through that, and I think your first moments in life are are very compelling. So if you could even start there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the thing is, like, when you're growing up, you don't really understand things that are going on. You just have your family dynamics and the way that things are, and you just think, well, this is how it is. And you hear stories. So all throughout my life, I would hear these stories and things in my family, but I never understood why things were the way they were.
Yeah.
So they used to tease me and say, oh, Ronnie was born in a mental hospital. And like my brothers and sisters, you know, they just were kids. They just would tease. And well, the truth of the matter is, I was born February 22nd, 1965 in a mental institution. I was taken from my mother. And I spent like the first 2 years of my life with my Uncle Dominic and my Aunt Marge in Baltimore, Maryland. So that, which I don't have any recollection of it, but I just believe that is probably at the heart of me. You know, that love that was given to me, because, you know, there were times throughout my life that I would see my Uncle Dominic, not often, but when he would always say, you're my baby. He would always make them references, and I always felt this connection to him. And but I didn't really, you know, you don't have the whole story, so you don't really understand.
Right.
So, but at that early age, at the age of 2, then my father requested my return home to Philadelphia. And so...
Was your mom still there, or?
Yeah, well, my mom had, I suppose, came back, and like all of the children, I have 7 brothers and sisters, so I'm the youngest.
You're the youngest, okay.
And so they were in foster homes too, so they somehow got us all back together. And so I vaguely remember little like memories, I suppose, because maybe it was really traumatic for me. I just remember being carried, and I feel like I remember meeting my family. I just remember this excitement when I was a child. But it was, you know, just not a good environment. So I just remember stories of my mother one time saying, you know, I would scream, and she said I screamed so loud that she put a pillow over my face to quiet me. And she said, if I didn't come out of that, you wouldn't be here, because nobody would stop her. So it was just very chaotic. So I feel like in my family it was more like I was preyed upon, because it was just, I, you know, had issues with my older brother with molesting me, and then I was beat by my mother. So it was all these things. And again, as a little kid, you don't know anything different. You just think that this is how the whole world is. So I was a happy little kid. I just remember, you know, when I would go to school, you know, and the things that would go on in my house, they didn't match up to the things that I saw. So again, I think possibly because I had my uncle and my aunt who loved me, that maybe sometimes you never know what that little change might be that put somebody on a different course, because as horrible as things were in my house, I just didn't believe the things. So,
were you still seeing your aunt and uncle during this time, or you lived with them up until you were
2, and then
you moved into the home with your mom and your
dad and my siblings
and all your siblings? And had your siblings all been together before that, or they had been in foster?
No, they had been in foster homes. So somehow the family unit was getting all back together. So then I don't know if I was, you know, just the last one in that.
Right. Okay. And then up until your teen years, are there any other moments or events that stick out to you?
I have quite the memory, so there's
Yeah.
a lot of them, so I'll just maybe tell you one or two.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of traumatic moments, so a lot of times if I go and I tell my story, I pick, certain ones, because I don't want to terrify people, or because I don't have nightmares, and the truth of the matter is, like, something I would like to say is, I love my mother. My mother's passed away now, but it wasn't until later that I would come to understand through the program that my mother had mental illness. I knew as a child that she was sick because I saw them come take my mother, several times. And my mother did things when I was a kid that I remember that even as a kid, it was like, that doesn't seem right, to do.
Yeah.
So she would do things. So I understood. And even though she was doing the things she did at that time, again, I didn't know anything else, but as I grew up, I understood that she was sick and that, them things happened. They were unfortunate things that happened, but I still loved my mom. So something that's very, very clear to me is the first time that I with drinking. So I was around 5 years old. My mother used to give me alcohol and take me to bars with her while my brothers and sisters were at school. So, a lot of people say, oh, think it's funny, give a kid a little bit of drink. Well, she gave me alcohol. And so what I remember most about that was the first time that I quit. And that's important to me because I feel like, in my life, I'm always, no matter what comes, I always find that inner strength when I'm down to get back up and, and push on, no matter how bad things have gotten in my life. And that's why recovery means so much to me. Like, I am such an advocate for recovery for me and for other people because of not only what I've been through, but what I know that, what the human being can withstand, we can become resilient. We can turn it.
Right.
So at that age, I remember the first time I quit, and it was very traumatic. When we learn in psychology about, when you're young, some of the things that people remember when it's traumatic. That's why I have so much recollection of when I was young, because a lot of stuff happened. And like that, being 5 years old, I remember because I wasn't in school, and I remember I was small, like doorknob.
And even at 5 years old, you knew this isn't right, or something's wrong, or something's odd with this.
With the drinking, it was, I didn't understand, this is alcohol. It was, my mom was drinking it, and she gave it to me.
Right.
So then, I just remember getting, starting to get stupid, and then laughing, and but what I remember was the first time I quit.
How old were you?
5 years old. Around 5 years old, I would say.
Okay.
I might have been maybe a little younger, but I'm going to say around 5. But she took me to the corner bar to get more alcohol. And down in Philadelphia, they have, like, when you go into a storefront, the corners have the bars, and they have like a little awning that comes out, and it's like a foyer open. And on the side, so it would make a good corner. And they wouldn't let me in because I was barefoot, not to mention that I'm a little kid. I shouldn't be in there anyway. But so I was waiting outside for my mom, and it was summertime, and I started spinning. And I walked over into the corner there, and it was a pee corner. It's where people relieve themselves. It stunk horrible. And I started to vomit, and it came out like a fountain. It splashed all over the walls, all over my feet. I just remember trying to get my feet backwards from it. But then this sound started coming out of me. Nothing else was coming out except this.
Yeah.
I didn't know they were dry heaves.
Yeah.
But this horrible, horrible sound. And it scared me so bad. So that I didn't drink again.
And
that made till I was 12. 12 was when I made the choice.
Okay, so then you were 5 when you started, when your mom gave you alcohol, and then how many weeks or months took place between then and when you had this moment outside where you were throwing up or had the dry heaves?
Oh, I don't know. Just it was, from what I recall, I might have started drinking with her when I was 4. I just remember when I quit.
Okay, and then
I
you
just
quit.
remember because my parents would have parties and different things like that, and we would come down, and there would be beer cans, and we would drink from the beer cans and different things like that.
Okay.
So.
Okay, and then you quit when? So you quit when you were 5. Okay.
And again, I was 5 years old. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to decide to quit. It was that experience I had made it so that sound was so traumatic that I never wanted to touch that stuff again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it made that impression on me. So whatever that behavior was of everybody giving it and all that, the alcohol being around, I made that decision as a child that I don't like what that did. So I'm not going to do that again.
Mm-hmm. And was that you? Was it all your siblings that were drinking at that point?
Or just... I don't recall.
Yeah.
I don't think so, because it was like I just remember doing it with my mother and while they were at school. Okay. Like I was her drinking buddy.
Okay.
So that's what I remember now. So
yeah. Okay. And then you said that you started again when you were 12. And what spurred that?
Well, okay. So my parents, about the age of 12, divorced. Mm-hmm. So my father was a truck driver, and he was always at work. And just our home became the after-school party house. So, I looked up to my brothers and sisters, whatever they were doing, and they didn't twist my arm. I just did what they were doing. Mm-hmm. I started to drink and get into things.
Mm-hmm. And that was around 12.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened in the years after that in your early teens?
The first consequence was when I was 13. Mm-hmm. So I got raped by an ex-boyfriend, and that experience, and when that happened, that was a pivoting point for me, because I had broke up with him, and his brother invited me up to a party at their house, and I drank too much. I was a show off when I drank, and I wasn't a big person, so I didn't need a lot of alcohol. And when he showed up, he said he wanted to talk. He dragged me into one of the back rooms, and I couldn't defend myself. So the next day, I wasn't close to nobody to tell anyone. So I just made a promise to myself that nobody would ever do that to me again, taking advantage of me like that. And again, during that time, my brother was still sexually harassing me, and it was pretty much very stressful on me, because my sister was in the room and I was in the room, and my brother would be drunk. He would sneak into the room, crawl on the floor, and I felt like there was nobody I could get help from, because of the way our family dynamics were. So the way I protected myself was I wrapped my blankets around me really tight, so that he couldn't get my blankets off and it would wake me up. I would wake up anyway. Well, after this incident happened, I was like so friggin' liberating, because he came into my room and I stood up and I screamed so loud. It was like 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, get out of my room. And I woke my dad up, and he was like, blah, 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 because they didn't know what was happening. And then the cat was out of the bag. I said, I can't, because there was more instances of things that my brother did, which I'm not going to go into, but it was things that just, he was devious, and he had his own issues, and, so he was sick in his own way. So
did you have anybody like at school or anybody else that you could reach out to, or that you reached out to, or anything, or you kind of just on your own?
No, I was pretty much on my own.
And how did you handle that? Like, what did you do?
I'll tell you. So I talk about these things I call the liquor box albums in my story. So in my home, my father had an in-house bar, and I used to collect the bottles because I thought they were pretty. And it had no connection with it. Had nothing to do with the alcohol. I thought they were pretty bottles and boxes, and they were decorations in my room. And I used to put them around my room. And I started writing my pain on paper and my joy. I started writing. I called them albums. I called them my liquor box albums, because I was into rock and roll, into music, and everything. But I was music illiterate, so there was no music notes. It was just the pain on paper. And that helped me. So I was very creative mentally. I just still always, no matter what was going on, I always was a happy person inside, in spite of the things that were going on.
Mm-hmm.
And but then in high school, when I got into high school, I had theater arts, and that was like such a relief for me to take part in that class and the creativity. And so we were given an assignment to create a mime, and I came up with this mime. I got it. I paired it with the song "Teenage Wasteland" from the rock band The Who.
Mm-hmm.
And in the mime, there's just a school desk there, nothing else. And the girl, her boyfriend breaks up with her, and she's distraught, and she goes on to drink all different kinds of alcohol, and she stumbles around. She smokes pot to kill the pain. That doesn't work. Then she takes some pills. Then she snorts lines. She goes through all the motions, and then she chooses to shoot drugs.
And this is in theater?
Yeah, this is in my theater arts class.
Okay.
I'm like 14 years old.
Okay.
Okay. And so then she shoots the drugs, and then in the song, the music's like sounds like it's spinning.
Yeah.
So she goes, I have her going in a spin, and just at that moment, she collapses to the floor. The boyfriend knocks on the door, and he has flowers to make up with her. And then she crawls to try to reach for the doorknob, and she dies.
And this is something that you wrote?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I wrote it to that music.
Right.
So so I wrote that, and of course, when the teacher saw it, she was like, would you please perform this before the entire high school in the evening? So I was like, okay, it was in my theater arts class. I was a young girl, so that's what I did. And one family member came, was my brother Sammy, who I'm the closest to in my family. He's closest to my age. And it was quite the experience. And ironically, and I say this in my story, it foreshadowed the events in my life that was to come, because that was the destructive road that I was on. And I mean, I didn't realize that at the time when I was doing that, and where all that came from. It was release. It was creative release for me.
Do you think your teacher or students or anybody knew what was going on at home with you at that point?
No, because I had girlfriends. I pretty much, I was popular. I was voted the most popular. In my 8th grade year, I was voted most likely to succeed. I was just very inside. I was a happy person. I was an easygoing person. I loved I didn't really get it from my family, but when I sat with you, I was like animated, and I came to life. Like, I really loved being around people.
Right.
And so again, I think it was, even though I had this at home, like, that wasn't like what was true for me. It was like I knew there was something more, something different.
Right. And I also see it, it's true that somebody could be dealing with so much at home and come to school and nobody would know, or they wouldn't, you could have a friend and they're going through so much and yet they don't show it. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's just a testimony that, everybody's going through something, but some people are going through a lot more, and you may not know it.
And the thing is, during that time, like with my brother, I think I started to drink on the weekends. You know what I mean? So we would get our little bit of money together. So that was release for me. I was a recreational drinker, drugger, for a number of years before it went, where it went. So that, youth partying, that was a release for me from a lot of the anxieties and the things as well, because I felt accepted with my friends, where things were the way they were at home. I mean, my dad was tough. He was old Italian guy, and he was quick with the hand to backhand you. And that, was like, for the longest time, I couldn't go near my father without going, because it was like you didn't know if he would raise his voice, and you're like, I would do that, and then he was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" It's like, I don't know. It's just.
So you wrote in your journals, and what?
No, not during that time. I wasn't.
How old were you when you started writing in your not these
journals,
books, but how old were you when you just started writing your thoughts?
Yes, that was my 12-ish. Now, when I was a little girl,
Mm-hmm.
I just remember the first times that I wrote things,
Mm-hmm.
but they were, I don't know if that was the beginnings of the creativity, because I used to make stories up. I used to make stories up, and I used to, I didn't write them because I couldn't write, but I remember the first time I wrote something. I wrote, it was to my Aunt Connie, who I loved very much. She helped raise us.
Yeah.
And I wrote something, roses are red, violets are blue, I love you like a shoe, or something. I just know there was a shoe in there that didn't really make no sense, but as a little kid, I was trying to express something inside.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I will tell you, so I used to make up stories to protect myself, even from my mother. So a lot of times I was getting beat because I didn't tell the truth, because I was afraid to tell the truth, because to me, if I told you the truth, Mom, you're going to beat me. So then I would just say things.
Say what you thought she wanted to hear.
Yeah, or no. It's like one time my umbrella blew inside out and it got ruined, and I was afraid to say that. So I made up a big story that some guy came and he took my umbrella. And then he made me go through the classes to find me. But it was like I was so afraid to go home.
Right.
I mean, but that's when I was really little. Then when I was, then we separated from my mom at that age, around that age of 12. So then, but as in high school, going back to what we were saying, as far as the beginning of the writing, that imagination was always there. And then it actually got to the, coming out in my 12, 13, my teen years, when I started to go through puberty.
Okay, so so then what happened after, let's see, so we talked about you wrote the play and then you performed the play, and about how old were you then?
I would say probably, I think it was 10th grade, so it was 9th or 10th.
Okay.
I think it was 9th. I think it was like maybe 14, it was 15, because then it was shortly after that I met Bernie.
Okay. And who's Bernie?
Okay, so Bernie. So Bernie was the love of my life that I met, and I was 15, he was 19. So I didn't see the age, you know what I mean? It was, here's this young man, and both of us met, and we came from similar backgrounds, and we locked on to each other. And Bernie was an IV drug user. So that's how that whole thing began.
The addiction?
Yeah, well, it went from I was recreational. So then I met Bernie. We fell in love, and I was 15. He was 19. And when he told me that he was a druggie and he was everything, he said, I'm a thief, I'm all this, because he fell in love with me. And that time when we were sitting there, he was crying to me, telling me, I'm no good for you. So that's where that conversation was going. He was like, cared for me so much, and he wanted me to know what he was. And of course, I'm 15 years old. I'm in love. You mean everything to me. I'm not going anywhere. It was already too late. It was like, I'm hooked on you. You're my everything. And his dad had done things to him. He had been through things. So we were locked. And so I was going to help you. I was going to help him. This was what I was thinking.
Right.
And then I got pregnant at 16. So then we moved in together. And so after I had my daughter at 17, I had my daughter. And
Is this Carly?
Yeah, no. Oh. Bernadette, my 35-year-old.
Okay.
So, Bernadette was my world. She was my little baby doll. You have to understand, I was 16, 17. I was a young kid. Okay, so here I've got this adorable little baby girl who I'd love, that I can give all the love to that I have. And she gives all that love right back to me. And she was the world to me. But I went from doing absolutely nothing at 17 to being an IV drug user. And then from
doing
there...
nothing as far as drugs?
No drugs.
No
I
drugs
wasn't doing
to
anything.
being an IV user. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's because it's what he did.
Right.
It's what Bernie was doing. So he didn't stop. When I was pregnant, I didn't do anything. I didn't start to shoot drugs until after I had my daughter. Okay. And it was a conscious decision on my part because he was leaving me at home. I was by myself, and it was like, I want to be a part of everything. So it was like, okay, well, that's what he does. And it was like, okay, well, I want to do it, too.
Right. Yeah.
And, you don't know what you're doing. It's like, well, I'm trying to help you. Maybe if I understood it, we got stupid logic.
Yeah.
It's like, well, maybe if I did this, I could help you.
Right.
And that was not a good decision.
Okay. Yeah. And then why wasn't it a good decision?
Well, because so between the age of 17 to 19, it just was, it was whenever we get money, you start stealing, you start trying to find ways and means, all these different things. So I became a nightmare. And my friends were graduating from high school, and I was just becoming a junkie.
Were you in high school at that point?
No.
Okay,
I dropped out.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I dropped out of high school when I was, I guess, 16 years old when I got pregnant.
Okay.
But it was while they were all progressing, I was like starting to get strung out and do bad things and steal and, just. And
you had Bernadette?
Yeah, and I had Bernadette. But the addiction, just to finding ways and means, were just, that just started to progress. And then we were in cahoots together, me and Bernie. So it was like, okay, we would steal together, do things together, and provide for our problem. And then 19 was the first time I went into detox.
And did you have Bernadette at that point? Okay, so okay.
Yeah,
okay.
So I had Bernadette when I was 17.
No, I mean, like, did you have custody
of
her?
Yeah, Bernadette was with me the whole time except up at the very end for when she went with my sister.
And how old was she at that point?
She was, I think, like 8 years old at that point. But at the age of, so 19, I wound up in my first detox. Okay, and I wound up there because I got in a car accident. I tried to rip a drug dealer off. I came up with this plan. By this time, I started pushing Bernie to the side, and it was like I needed drugs. So it was like I turned into like a monster, and our love for each other got twisted, and that got sick. But we couldn't separate from each other. But but I went to Trenton, New Jersey to rip a drug dealer off. I consciously made that decision that I was sick. I was in withdrawal. And, on that day, I got the drugs in my hand. I didn't have no money. And they were in tinfoil. That never happens usually. I'm not going to tell you. They're just in bags, okay? Not in tinfoil. And so I get it, and I hit the gas. He dives in, breaks my grip off the steering, and I struggle to get them drugs in my mouth because it's like after all that, I'm going to get these drugs. And, of course, cops come, all that stuff, and I'm in detox. After talking to the cop, they got me help because the tinfoil wasn't, you can't digest tinfoil, so I was still sick.
So you had the tinfoil in your mouth, too? I mean,
I ate everything. I ate the drugs, but I was still sick because my body couldn't digest that.
Yeah. And did you have Bernadette with you at this point in the car?
Yes.
Okay.
All the time, or no, I don't remember.
I thought I read in your book where she was with you in the car, or was that something
else?
No,
that's when I got arrested. At that point, no, Bernadette was not with me.
Okay.
I was by myself because then I got put into the detox. That was the first detox, and then I left that detox. If you want to fast forward to...
Well, so you went to the detox, and then...
That's when addiction really took off. I went into the detox, and then from the age of 19 to 25, that's when I became a monster.
Help.
No, I was in and out. I started going in and out of different detoxes, and I think I went through maybe 2 rehabs. I left every single one of them because Bernie would get money, and we would just, and so that just didn't.
And were they unsuccessful because like you were forced to go? Like someone made you go? Or
no,
did
a lot
you
of
want
times,
to go?
no, a lot of times I knew. Look, I knew from the first time I did that, that was not the life that I wanted. You know what I mean? Like when I was growing up, it was like, oh, I want to be a junkie when I grow up. Like I knew from the second I stuck that needle in my arm, the very first time, I knew I didn't want to do that. But it was just, you're young, you just don't think. So as time went on, to that age of 20, it was about 25. That's that event with my daughter.
Okay, and how old was she at that point?
She was about 8 years old.
And she was okay. And then what? He explain like what happened?
Okay, so things between 19 through 25, I just become a terror. I become a monster. I become everything that I hated. I'm a liar. I'm a cheater. I steal, and I hate myself. I hate the world. The only light in my life is that little girl, my daughter Bernadette. Okay, Bernie and me, we are still sick, but we're living the same place, but he's off in alcoholism and all that stuff, and I'm going out and getting money all day long, daughter in tow. I took my daughter through my addiction with me. So on this day in November 1990, I was walking up the side of the road in Chester County, Pennsylvania, and I was up to no good, and it was a cold November day, and the cops pulled over because I fit a description. I mean, I was wanted in the tri-state area, so they were on to me. And I gave them a fake name, and they took me in for questioning. And at the police station there, you know, they separated me and Bernadette, and she started crying. And then, you know, they got me in there. Then they were like, called the surrounding counties, came back in and said, you know, you're under arrest. We're transporting you to Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. And then they let me see my daughter. And that was a pivotal moment for me because when a person is so strung out and so addicted, you know, I still felt love from her, not from anything else because I was locked. But at that moment when she saw me and she called out, Mommy, and she put her arms out as if I was like this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful person, and she just ran to me. It just broke right through, and I like just dropped to my knees and I held her so tight, and it just, you know, touched me inside where I needed to be. And I told her, I said, Bernadette, I'm so sorry for showing you this kind of a life. It was a horrible life that I was showing her. And I was stuck in it. I didn't know how to get out of it. I was caught in my own trap with my daughter. And I hugged her and I told her to remember that I promised her, because we make promises to our kids. Oh, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get that. But, you know, I said, I promised you that I would get us out of this one day. And today is that day. To hold on and to be strong. That I was coming back for her. I wanted her to know I was coming back for her because we hadn't been separated. And it was inevitable. You know, they were taking me. And I kind of like had that feeling inside, this is it. And then I stood up and I told them my real name. And I don't know how I remembered my sister's phone number because I hadn't talked to them in like 5 years. And I told my sister's number so they could call her to come get my daughter. And then Child Services took my daughter, and they took me off to prison.
And then how long were you in prison?
Okay, so they took me to Montgomery County Prison, and this is kind of important because they took me there, and when I was sitting in that cell, wow, being so addicted and so strung out, I didn't feel the drugs anymore. I had reached a point where I was terrified of the withdrawal. So the ways and means and everything that I was doing was to keep withdrawal away. So I didn't really feel, I didn't walk around stoned. I just knew without this drug, this happens. So when I was sitting in that cell, I knew it was like this big monster was coming. And And but I figured I could go before the judge. The next morning, I could hold it together, and you think you know everything. He'll release me on bail or on my own recognizance, right? And then I can go get high and fix everything. Well, the next day they take me from the judge, and I was just starting to shake, and they start to read off a whole line of charges, and it hits me that I'm not going anywhere. And then I come up with a great plan, and the plan is that I'm going to fake a seizure, and I throw myself on the courtroom floor, and in my mind, this is what I need to do to get help, because I figure I don't know what else to do, and I shake all over the ground. And the sheriffs, they try to help me. They turn me on my side, handcuff me. They call the ambulance, take me to the emergency room. And then that's a whole nother thing that happens there.
What's that?
Okay, I'm laughing now. It was not funny then.
No.
Okay, so they get me into the room. They didn't put me with other people, because at that point I was a prisoner, an inmate. So they put me in this room. Doctor was behind like this, like glass wall, and they hooked an IV up to me. And he came over and he said, I'm going to give you something for the withdrawal. He injected something into the IV. He didn't tell me what it was. Last thing I remember thinking was, my plan's working. I mean, I wasn't really trying to be devious. I was trying to take care of myself the only way I knew how.
Right.
I was surviving. And along with conning and manipulating. So he injected something into it, and as he walked away, I was thinking, okay, everything's going to be okay. And suddenly a cold, burning, horrible pain started ripping through my body. And I sat straight up in the bed and I screamed. I won't curse. What the hell kind of crazy crap did you give me? And just then sheriffs came running in, guards, and held me down. I went into an extremely violent withdrawal. And now, during this time, AIDS was an epidemic, and nobody knew who had it. And during this time, and this drug was making my legs cramp up. It was making my body cramp up, and I was my jaw was clenching uncontrollably. And the drugs were eating the drug they gave me. I think it was Narcocaine or one of them, where it was eating all the drugs out of my body, and my jaw was clenching down. And the sheriff that was trying to hold me down over here, he thought I was trying to bite him. And don't do that. And he hollered out, she's trying to bite me. And they grabbed me, pushed me down so hard into that hospital bed, I thought they were going to break my neck. They broke the heel right off of my boot. And then they 4-pointed me.
What does that mean?
That means they strapped down all my limbs.
Oh.
I don't want to say like a wild animal, but that's really what it was like. But in mental health, there's times when they do that so you don't hurt yourself. Well, they did that for, my body was out of control.
Yeah.
So they strapped me down. About a half hour later, I was so weak from that drug, I couldn't even lift my fingers. And they came in and they unstrapped me and took me back to prison.
And that was the day. I mean, did you still have more detox to go through, or that was
no. Well, then
it?
It gets a little bit kind of crazier there now. So then, they take me back to court the next day. So this is kind of where when you're coming off of drugs, your mind and things are going through, your mind wants the drugs. And it wants to do whatever it has to do to have them. So they take me back to court the next day. Now, there's a totally different person going to court this day. Okay? Back then, they used to put you back in your street clothes. And my coat had a belt on it that was the same color. You would never probably be able to do that today. But they put me in a holding cell. And when they put me in the holding cell, the only thing I could think of was I needed to get out of there. I needed to get high. So I was I told you I had quite the imagination. So I came up with a plan. I always have a plan. And my plan of escape was that I was going to call the sheriff back to light my cigarette. And when he turned to walk away, I would take my belt and flip it into the door jamb. And I would just push, I was in street clothes, I would just push the door open and walk right out of there. It sounded good. He comes back, he lights my cigarette. I flip the belt perfectly into this lock. And when I go to push the door open, it slides out. So now I'm panicking. And as I'm panicking, I'm looking around the room, thinking I'm so intelligent that I start thinking about the construction of the building, and I start thinking, if I can get into the ductwork, I can get out of here. Never even thinking, if sheriffs see you doing that, they could shoot you. I had no logic. Then, as I'm looking around, I notice in the bathroom above the toilet that there's a light fixture with a lip on it. I climb up on the toilet, I take that belt, and I wedge it up underneath, and I pull. Sawdust, everything's coming down, and I can see above that there's like a hole above the light. I get it pulled down, and then that I think I can get into, which now today, there was no way. I mean, I guess I could have dig and done, I don't know. But, so they come, the sheriff comes, I jump down, I act like I wasn't doing anything, and he takes me back in front of that same judge. So now, the judge that I faked the seizure on the day before, I don't know if they knew or not. I'm sure other people had antics. But now I'm standing in front of this judge. And I hope you can get this picture. I'm standing in front of this judge. I think I was, 25. My hair is in knots. I've had a big head of hair. My clothes are all disassembled. I've got a broken boot. And I'm telling you, I know I had sawdust all over me. I could cry thinking about it because I have no idea how that affected that judge, seeing a human being like that.
Yeah.
But he looked at me and he saw right through me, and he read my charges, and then he stipulated me to Eagleville Hospital Treatment Center. So I couldn't leave. There was no bail. There was nothing. I was going back to jail. So, okay, so I still had one more plan of escape. And now, because I knew they were going to transport me, so now I thought, well, even though my hands and my feet are shackled to a belt, they had put a leather belt around your waist. I thought that when I got outside, that I could drop to the ground, roll underneath one of the vehicles, and that they wouldn't notice that I was gone. And when I got outside, it was the first moment of sanity that I had, because as sick as I was for drugs, I looked around. There was like maybe 7, there was guards and sheriffs taking me back. And I noticed that they had guns, and I just had that moment of sanity, and I walked the walk, and I went back to jail. And then it was about 2 weeks later that they took me to that rehab at that Eagleville Hospital. And do you want me to go on?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so they take me there, and when we get there, they open the van door, and I get out. They take my handcuffs off. They shut the van door. They get back in the van, and they just drove off and left me standing there.
At the hospital?
Outside the hospital, right there, with my broken boot. Okay, I had no clothes. I only had the clothes on my back, which back then I had these flowered pants that were popular. I had these flowered blue jeans and a broken boot. So, and the first thing I thought was, I'm free. I can go get high. And the next thought I had.
But this had been after 2 weeks,
After
right?
2 weeks.
So you had already been through the detox and everything.
Yes. So now, I don't know if it was because I had 2 weeks without any chemicals in my body, but there was another thought. And the next thought, after I can go get high, I'm free, was I could walk through the doors right there. And the thought was, I had no idea what was on the other side of them doors because I never made it through a treatment program. But I knew what was waiting for me on the streets of Philly. I knew them horrors of addiction. And through the grace of God, I walked through them doors. And this is why, for recovery and institutions, I have such a great respect for them, because that institution they gave, to me, this was a big deal. They gave me a room to share with another person. They gave me clothes. I didn't have no clothes. I have nothing. They gave me shoes, a voucher for that, medical treatment, dental care. I mean, they wowed me. And then that's also where I got introduced to therapy. Mm-hmm. So I had my therapy with a one-on-one with a counselor, which I enjoyed. And then the group therapy, that was where I had a really big breakthrough, mm-hmm. which was, do you want to hear?
Yeah.
Okay. So I had never been in any kind of group therapy. So in group therapy, it's a big rehab, Eagleville. Mm-hmm. So they had us all, we would sit in a big circle, and they would send a couple of counselors in, and we would have discussions. But I noticed that they, you get onto things. It seemed like they went around the room and they would pick somebody and they would pull them out of their shell. They would like put them on the hot seat, the hot spot, or whatever. And so I was like Miss Goody Two-Shoe. I followed all the rules and do everything that they would tell me to do, so I wouldn't be one of them people. And one day there was a counselor there. Her name was Sanity, and they started around that circle. And now when I was in group, I went from probably looking like I was about 50 to about 14. And my hair was long. And I literally sat in group like this. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it looked like a wild animal.
Because you didn't want them to call on you.
No, it was just like, mm-hmm. I just would, look at you, look up through my hair. Mm-hmm. So Sandy stopped at me and she said, Veronica, let's talk to Veronica. And like inside I was like, oh my God. And she said, Veronica, I don't know where it happened, how it happened, or why it happened, but somewhere, somehow, somebody told you it wasn't okay to think. And her words were like a punch to my stomach that knocked me straight back into childhood, to be humiliated by my mother in front of all my brothers and sisters, only now it's in front of this whole group. But that's not what happened, because then she said, we decided that from now on you're going to wear your hair up and we're going to give you a voucher for dresses. And I was like, well, that's not that bad. Like they didn't do anything, mm-hmm. I was just used to so much trauma and mm-hmm. making my own issues as well, that was like, I could do that. Mm-hmm. And I went and I pulled my hair back. And when I pulled my hair back, as soon as I went out around people, I was like, oh, like I was looking for my hair to hide in my hair. I realized you can see my face and my expressions, because I was probably giving a lot of dirty looks and stuff too to people, mm-hmm. I don't know. But I could see other people as well. Mm-hmm. And, and then I got the dresses, and the dresses were professional dresses that I picked. I never had a real job, but when I put the dresses on, they made me feel smart and they made me feel pretty. So now I went back to group and I've got, the dresses on. I'm sitting up straighter, I'm smiling, and they come in, I'm like, okay, I'm this thing now, and they come in, I'm like, okay, and they start around that circle, and Sandy stops at me again. And she says, Veronica, how are we feeling? I'm like, it's having a positive effect on me, the changes, Mm-hmm. I mean, it was clear that mm-hmm. that was. And then she proceeded to pull me the rest of the way out of the shell. And she said, from now till you leave, you will be this group's leader. And to me, it was like, it wasn't good news to me, because I had a voice, I didn't know how to use it. I didn't know how to be a team, pull anybody up on behaviors in a productive way. Be like, hey, it's going to be, mm-hmm. like I had no skill on coping or dealing with people. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know how to be there for anybody, because part of being that group leader was, when people wanted to leave, you had to step up to the plate and mm-hmm. be there for people. But I did what they told me to do, and I flourished. And I began to find a voice. Mm-hmm. And then, but that's when kind of mm-hmm. after that happened, then things went, no matter how good things are going, life happens. And then they call me into the office, and As soon as I go in the office, I know that something's wrong. Sandy's in there. There's a couple staff members there, and she's got a horrible look of distress on her face. And then she comes over to me. She puts her hand on my shoulder, and she says, Veronica, I want you to stay calm and just know we're going to be here for you. And then she proceeds to tell me that Bernie, the man that I love, was found dead, laying in the streets of Philadelphia of a drug overdose. And I just collapsed into a pool of sorrow. I hadn't cried. Oh my gosh, I hadn't had no feelings. Mm-hmm. And we were in group telling me, they were saying it's okay not to cry, because we thought there was something. I thought there was something wrong with me because I couldn't cry. Well, when I got that news, I cried for days. And they were there for me. And they made the arrangements for me to go to his funeral. And now when I went to that funeral, we were not welcomed in our hometown because we were thieves. We had bad reputations. And I didn't care. I was going to go say goodbye to the man that I loved. And I will tell you, I pulled my hair back in that ponytail. I put that dress on. And I walked into that funeral home. And, you know, people just moved out of my way. And I walked up to that casket. And I knew that that would be the last time I would ever lay eyes on him. And when I looked at him laying there, the room might as well have been empty. I laid my head down on his chest. I ran my hands through his hair, and I told him how much I loved him. And then I told him that I was so sorry that we got messed up like we did, but I was really sorry that he didn't make it out alive. And then I promised him that I would stay clean and sober for both of us, that I would find a way not to live this life anymore. And then I went right back to that rehab, and I finished that program.
How long were you in the program at Eagle?
I'm going to say I was probably there, I might have only been 60 days, you know, so I don't remember, but probably I'm thinking that's probably what it was, maybe 60, 90 days.
Okay.
And so now the thing is, when I left that program, the day I left, I met with Sandy, and I told her how scared I was. So, you know, they have aftercare. I had all them plans, but I was going to go live with one of my older brothers, the one I'm close with, my brother Sammy, and go to meetings. And Sandy said, you know, I told her I was scared. She said, all you have to do is, you know, go to meetings, pick a program, and build a foundation. You'll be all right. And
go to NA meetings?
Yeah, go to meetings. Well, see, she told me that I could go to any meeting. She said, you have to pick a program. So whether it was NA, AA, I needed to go to a 12-step program.
Okay.
And because of my history, I could go to either. And she said, she told me, she said, when you raise your hand, you say, I'm an alcoholic she said, you say you're a drug addict with a desire not to drink. That's what she told me. And that's what I did. So I went right from, first off, when I left there, I was terrified because I just went right into a transition because I had been introduced to a support system that helped me. And now I was leaving it.
Where did you go to live?
Okay, so I was going back to Bucks County to my brothers in Andalusia to live. That was in Eagleville, so that wasn't close. And so I had to build, you know, there was an abundance of recovery available to me, but I was the one that was going to have to make that effort. So I was scared because I didn't trust myself, okay, because I had all this with me. But what I did was what they said to do. I went right from that rehab to a meeting. And when I went into the meeting, I raised my hand and I said, I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict with a desire not to drink. And they said, welcome to Al-Anon. I went to the wrong program. So you know Al-Anon's for the families and friends of alcoholics, but they were very kind. And after they let me stay, and after the meeting, they told me where a 12-step meeting was that was a better fit. So the next day, my brother took me to my first 12-step meeting. And that meeting, he drops me off, and it's a freaking house. And I'm like, what is this? And I walk in, and it looks like a hangout. It looks like somebody's hangout. There's sofas and chairs all around the perimeter of the room. I can smell coffee in the kitchen. There's like 2 or 3 people there, and I just sat right down. And within about 15 minutes, that entire room was jam-packed full. This is the Northeast. There's a lot of people. The whole room's full of people. The floor is covered with people. All the way out into the kitchens with people. All the way out the door, onto the porch. It wowed me how many people were in recovery. And then at break, I was standing outside smoking a cigarette. And the lady comes over to me, and I'm looking straight at the ground like, I'm freaking scared. And she says, hi, my name's Dorothy. Are you new? And I said, yeah, my name's Veronica. I just got out of rehab yesterday, and they told me to come to meetings. And she said, yeah, that's what you do. You come to the meetings. We'll get your phone list, and you get connected in. And I said, well, they told me to get a sponsor too. Will you sponsor me? It was like, you're fair game. You talked to me. Yeah. Okay. So you are the sponsor thing. I didn't have no idea what a sponsor was. I just know that's what they said. So this lady, she laughed, and she said, yes, I'll sponsor you. So, so the thing is, during this time, I was still in transition, and I was going to the meetings, but I got hit with an obsession. And I went and I used. So the thing was, when I went and I used, I just remembered that the people in the room said, keep coming back no matter what. And that stuck in my head. So I went back to the meetings, and I said, I got high. And they said, well, did you call your sponsor? And I'm like, no. And they said, well, no, you got to want what your sponsor has. You work with your sponsor. They'll guide you through the steps. They'll help you. So it was a couple of weeks later, I was at a meeting, and this lady walks into the meeting. She's got hot pink spandex on. She's got bleach blonde hair, tall woman. And when she walks past me, she has a keychain with a bunch of tags and keys on it that kind of makes like a jingle noise, and the tags all represented a lot of time. And I was attracted to her recovery, and I wanted what she had. Like, that was like, whoa, I'm thinking everybody has to be like a nun, like there's no more fun. And here she walks in, I'm like, wow. So I go outside after a break, and I start talking to her. And we're still friends today. And I start talking to her, and she, as we're talking, she says, what did you say your name was? I said, Veronica. She says, Veronica. She says, I've been talking to a Veronica on the phone. It's me, Pam. And I'm like, see, I had been talking to a lot of people. I just didn't know who anybody was. Yeah. So here, we had already connected. I asked her to sponsor me, and she said yes. She took me to her house, and it just so happened that at her house, there was recovering people there all the time, and it was just what I needed. Yeah. But I was still in this transition, and I was missing Bernie. I was grieving him, and I just hit a place where I didn't want to be here without him. And so I decided to go to Philadelphia and buy the drugs that he bought and join him. And when I got there,
what do you mean by join him? Like,
just I didn't want to be here. I felt like he left me in a rat race, and I just didn't want to be on this plate without him. Yeah. And when I got down there, I did the drugs. I fell out, and the junkies that were there in the shooting gallery took care of me, and they helped me. And when I came to, I bought more of them drugs, and I went home. And the next day, it was June 8th, 1991. There was a knock on the door, and it was a guy that I had been in rehab with who had been taking me to some meetings. He stopped by to take me to a meeting. And I said, yeah, I'm just going to go take a shower. I'll be out in a couple minutes. And I was lying. I was going to do them drugs. And, well, this is where you find out that your higher power has a plan, and he doesn't ask you for permission, And I did them drugs, and I fell out in the bathroom. And at that precise moment, the phone rang, and that guy answered the phone. It was my daughter who wanted to talk to me. And he said that he was already suspicious of my behavior. So he knocked on the bathroom door, and when I didn't answer, he broke the door down. And he said I was laying there dead. And he panicked, and He called another recovering person that lived right down the street, and then they called the paramedics. Now, both of them tried to resuscitate me. They said my eyes were wide open, I had no pulse, and I wasn't breathing. And I will tell you that I did have an experience with my higher power that I will never forget, that is very sacred to me. But that experience, it only reinforced that one way or the other, I have a road that I have to walk here. And the paramedics came, they administered that drug that eats all the drugs out of your body. Okay? And as I was coming to, it was like coming up through a pool. And the first thing I said to everybody in the room was, get the F out, I didn't use. And then the police and the paramedics that were there, they said that by law, they had to take me to the hospital because of what had just happened there. So they took me to the hospital, and the staff people there tried to talk sense to me, and I didn't want to hear anything. I did what I normally do. I signed myself out AMA, against medical advice, and I went home. And when I got home, I was so angry. I felt so lost. And I was walking past. My brother lived on the 3rd floor. And the window was open. It was June. And when I walked past the window, I overheard that recovering person talking to the guy he was a newcomer. The guy from the rehab was a newcomer too. And he was pulling him up on his behavior. He was saying, you need to be hanging out with the men, not the ladies in recovery. And then he said, so that you can recover. And then he said, you need to back off from my sister and let her recover. And he called me his sister. And it touched me because I didn't feel like anybody's sister. And I felt like a piece of crap that couldn't get it together, that just kept messing up. And when he got done with that guy, he came up into my brother's apartment. He got a hold of me in the living room. And the way he spoke to me in a way like somebody who had been through, could only do that, had been through a living hell. And he said, Veronica, I don't know if you realize it or not, but you effing died today. And it's a miracle that you're standing here. And I'm telling you that if you don't start working with your sponsor, making more meetings, and surround yourself with recovering people, you're going to be back out on the streets using again. And you might not be lucky enough to make it back in here. And wow. At that moment, I don't know, something clicked, like a light went on. And I could feel, I could sense the unconditional love that was being extended to the guy from the rehab and to me. And it was that reached and touched inside of me. And nothing was ever the same, because from that moment forward, that pushed me head on into recovery. And I became willing to do anything and everything that I needed to do to be a recovering person. And that was the pivoting point, that unconditional love. It broke that chain, that last chain, because I was in that transition. I was trying to find my way. You know, it was like I had that taste of recovery, that, you know, that there was another way. But like sometimes people think like, okay, well, I'm in rehab, everything's going to, and then they get hit with life and all them things and living. And but I held on, and through that transition, and you know, people telling me to keep coming back, and then that family that I never had, that family was that 12-step recovery, that the people, even in the people in the rehab, that was the family that was reaching to me, that I had been looking for, that I had not had throughout my lifetime, that good direction. And from that moment forward, everything changed. Nothing, I mean, inside it just blew everything apart. Wow. And that started that road of recovery.
Wow. And how old was Bernadette at this point?
Okay, so now as I went through the process to get Bernadette back because I signed custody to my sister, and then through that process of I think it was like maybe a 6-month process, my daughter came. I had to go through the whole ropes, they from visits to a couple hours to half the day to overnight. So that was like a 6-month period, and to have her come back, she was 9 years old.
And were you living with your family or with your brother?
No. So part of that shift, was I got a sponsor. I took them suggestions that guy said to me. Okay, so I had my sponsor, but I started working with her, with Pam. Then I moved in with Pam, and then it was like I had 24 hours a day. I had recovering people around me. I made more meetings. I got my daughter back. I got a job. I got my CDL. Like I just started. Then I got within like 6 months, I got my own place. So me and Bernadette we had our own home, and it was like, I turned into like super mom. And it was like, I was happy to be alive. I was happy to be, clean and sober. And I was, just happy to be living life. And so I went through all my parole, my probation. It was like, doing everything that they told me to do. It was like nothing to follow now that I had direction and I understood, that this is the road that I want to be on. And now I'm willing to do all these things to stay on this road. And
is that when you started to write your book?
No. So in this process of working with my sponsor, they started me. We journal, we write our steps, and I started. So I went from Pam back to Dorothy. I had Dorothy, Pam, then I went back to Dorothy. So I started writing all kinds of stuff. So I wrote a screenplay. And I wrote a screenplay called Death Warrant. Okay, it was an female action, dark action hero who falls in love, blah, 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 blah. It was good. So I wrote this screenplay and I took it up to New York to show to someone. And actually the way it happened was I went up to New York and they wanted me to do a monologue. So because I started to do things, and so I just wrote. I'm like, I'm going to write my own monologue, and I wrote this. And what happened was they liked it. They were like, where's the rest of that story at? And I'm like, oh, I've got it at home. There was no story. It was I just wrote the monologue. But I said, oh, it's at home. Well, could you bring it back up? We'd like to see it. So, of course, I went home and I wrote Death Warrant. I wrote this whole thing, and I'm like, the set, everything. And I was going to take it back up there to somebody else to show it to them. My sponsor went with me. And we took the train up to New York City from Bucks County. Well, from Trenton. And on the way up, we were going over some step work. And when she was going over my step work, she kept noticing these little writings I had in there. And when she read them, she said, these are really good. You should write a book. And that's what started it right there, because I bought an empty book. And I started putting all them little writings in there. And I carried that little book with me. And in 2001, it's when I self-published that book. I don't share this often. But in 2001, right after I, not even a month after I published that, my sponsor found out she had cancer of the throat. And on her deathbed, I had published that book, and I went while she was like in a coma, whatever that, that induced when they're in hospice. And I sat at the side of her bed reading that book to her. And it was just one of them moments in life where, I knew that I was losing her, but she had sparked so much in me you know, and then to actually have that book there, it was like, hey, see, I took your suggestion, you know, and I got it into an actual book. And but yeah, I don't share that often, but that was so that's how that got to be. And then I kept writing, and then from there it was I was on fire. See, I didn't tell you this, but when I was writing that book, started to write that, I was writing a lot of different things, but I was on fire to connect with people who were struggling from all walks of life. Like, you just couldn't put me in a box in one fellowship, because it was like, I saw other people falling through the cracks. I saw other people struggling. And I believe that that came from when I was a little kid. My mom, because I would tell my neighbors all our business, like, you know, I go to the house and Mommy's beating me, you know. So I wasn't allowed off the steps.
Yeah.
So I had to sit on the front steps in the city. And you will be surprised. In my household, my father called every race a name. They were, you know, this, they were that, they were this, they were that. But as a kid, I sat on the steps and we lived in a mixed neighborhood. So I saw all the people. I saw them smiling. I saw them in pain. I saw people crying. I saw people laughing. And I was a little kid. So I'm sitting on the step with my imagination, and I'm watching, you know, life happen. I watched a dog get hit by a car. You know, one morning I came out, and there was the lady across the street. Her name was, I called her Chopper. I guess her name was Chops, but I thought that that's what it was. You know, the two ladies over there, they taught me how to dance. So we used to dance in the street. And one morning when I was sitting on the steps, I noticed blood, fresh blood. And I had never really saw fresh blood, and there was things in it. And I just remember looking at it. And then I just remember seeing later Chopper with, you know, white things wrapped around both her wrists. And I wouldn't kind of make that connection till later in life, you know. But I saw all of life happening. So I saw a lot of pain, a lot of struggles, but I saw a lot of happiness, and I saw everybody of every color going through it. So whatever I heard, I told you, in the house, I didn't believe because it didn't match.
Right.
You know, when I went out around you, you were happy, you were nice to me, so it was like, I like you. You know, it was like I was getting more attention from you and love and kindness than I was getting in my own household. So now when I was writing the books, now I was clean and sober at this time. So the books, I don't think there's even a page in there that mentions drugs. It's about the human condition. So that's why the books are for any person. So as I was writing them, it was, the mindset was, one page has nothing to do with the next page as I'm writing them. And the mindset is, I have a whole fellowship of healthy, good direction being given to me amidst my twisted thinking. And that's what came out in the books. But when I was writing it, I wasn't writing it with any intent of, it was my private stuff. It was like, blah, 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 you know, God, blah, 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 life, you know, or you, I'm mad at you, you know, it was, you know, so I just knew that that's what I was doing. But the, you know, that twist was getting in there, that health of, you know, there's better thinking, you know, there's solutions, and all that came out. So, but even though I was still writing, I was I was on fire. And
you wanted to share that knowledge with other people.
So what happened was, like I said, you couldn't put me in this box with just one fellowship. It was like, there's people out here. So I came here to this fellowship because I need to be here, because I need this help. But there's a whole world out there
that needs you.
Well, I was just like, no, man, I'm defiant. It's like, you tell me to stay in that box, or you say this, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, that guy over there, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. And that's what happened. So then I designed this 12-step program called RTC 12-Step Ministries, and it was for all people from all walks of life. Then I was a CDL truck driver at this time. I was driving a limo, And my boss allowed me to use the big limo bus to build a transportation system to pick recovery houses up. So I built a whole system, and I had other people. One of the churches gave me a big bus, and so we had this bus, and I designed the bus route for them, and we went by, and we picked the recovery house. I played music, and because my idea was, I didn't focus on we are sick. I focused on, it was always like a school kind of an atmosphere. I was always teaching you. The RTC, it's like, here's your homework, you know? And so that kind of happened. And what happened was, I don't know how this happened, but somehow I got it televised for 3 years in the Bucks County area. So now I got a transportation system. I have $100 a month, a week budget, because my husband and I, you know, it was like, I wasn't going asking people for money. It was like, I'm going to do this. So I just don't see them barriers. It's like, this is what I'm going to do. And that's what I did. So I had it on televised for 3 years through the public access channel. The people who filmed it, they just came on board. Like, they just came there, we're going to help you out with this. And they filmed it. And I still have them. So we made DVDs out of them to give to other people. And so I did that for the 3 years. And then we wound up with other meetings. And of course, one of the things when you're working with recovering people, with addicts, with people who they're not being paid, okay, you help comes however you help, and you take the help, but you're not an entity structured with money. It is, we're going to do this. So, you know, people don't show up, people relapse, things happen, and it got too heavy. But I still continued to write, and I stayed in recovery, and I took to making the DVDs and sending them out, because it just got too big. It just got too big for me to be able to handle. So during that time, I had made that commitment that when I was in my 50s, I didn't know what I was saying, but I made that. I'm like, God, you know, I'm imagining, I see myself writing and editing, looking out a window, and I see water, you know, with I'm this missive writer. And when I'm 50, God, you know, this is the plan.
And we love you ladies, but we're closing. Like,
Oh.
I know, there's 1 clock in here. We used to have one, and the battery.
Can we
keeps
have
leaking
5
out.
minutes to wrap up?
Okay, well, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so where were we?
So we finished up in that room, and now we're out here.
Yeah, we just figured we'd get, you know,
we're
a
gonna finish up out
new
here.
scenery. So,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Okay, so I think we were finishing up with RTC, and that disbanded, and I continued on in recovery. So then after 9/11, well, I had met my husband in recovery. My husband is not a recovering person. He's just a regular person, and he's a wonderful man. And I've been married for 23 years, 24 years now to him. I met him. So after I had about 1.5 years clean. So we had a daughter. And then after 9/11 in 2003, we decided to move to Tennessee to finish raising our daughter. And so we moved down here. I got plugged into the program because the program I attend, the 12-step program I attend, is all over the world. So I got plugged into that. We started our trucking company because my husband and I are both CDL drivers. And
A tractor trailer? That's
for 23 years,
that's
I
what
drove
my
tractor
dad
trailer.
does.
Yeah, and we had our own trucks, and it was wonderful for me and him. And so we started our business down here, got our daughter into school, and things were good. And
Which daughter?
Carly, my youngest daughter,
Okay.
who just now turned 21, and she's the one who's helped me with the books.
Okay.
So so we moved down here, and things were good. But no matter how good things are, good or bad, life happens. And in March 2010, I was on a job site in Brockwood, Tennessee with my tractor trailer. I had a dump tractor trailer. And the part of the trailer was coming down, and this door that weighed about 1,000 pounds swung backwards and smashed my head against the side of the trailer. I had a hard hat on, or else I'd have been killed instantly. So I broke the bones in the left side of my face, split my face in half, and I wound up with 5 titanium plates in my face and brain damage, and lost a lot of my physical abilities, and I became disabled. And as a family, we lost our business, we lost our home, and we were left in financial ruin. And we held together tight, and no matter how bad things got, I knew I was still breathing, and I hung on to my recovery, and I stayed clean and sober through it. And because I think, it was such a traumatic event, and so many bad things that were happening, but it wasn't only happening to me, it was happening to my whole family. We were all going through it. And during that time now, just before that accident, I was scheduled to take my GED. And so I went and I took that test. And then when I took that test, even though all of my, my mind and my body, things were not in sync, but my brain was still working. It just wasn't in touch with everything else. But I took that test, and when I got done taking that test, I came up with a plan of recovery and from my accident, and I designed my own therapy. And the plan was that I was going to become a college student. So I got with the disabilities office right here at Chat State, and together we made all the accommodations for all my injuries. They had programs, all different things to help me. And in between all of my classes, I lived in that room we were just in, that glass room. Well, I spent most of my time in there because they just had, it was a good experience in spite of everything in my life was falling down around me, was collapsing at this time. I mean, financially, everything. And this institution just really shined.
How old was Carly at this time?
Carly was, I think at that time she was I think she was like about 14, because then what happened was during this time at the age of 15, she tested into this college, and we went to school at the same time here, so we got to spend that like 3 semesters together, and that brought us really close together as a family. And then I graduated, I went back to work. And then in 2014, after Carly graduated, we were on our way to visit a college in South Carolina, and we got hit head on.
Oh, wow.
Carly was okay, but I regressed in my injuries, in my brain injury. And so I came back to school again. And then in 2015, we were on our way here again, and on 153, we got hit from behind. Carly was okay, I regressed farther. And now by this time, I'm really upset because I go into the meetings and I'm sharing, I am so distraught that this wasn't how I planned for my life to be.
Going into the NA meetings?
Yeah. Well, it was AA because I went to narcotics. NA up north. In the South, I chose to come to AA.
Okay.
Originally, it was NA down here, but AA was more like what I was accustomed to.
Okay, gotcha.
So there was that transition, but it's 12 steps. It's 12 steps.
Yeah.
It's recovery. So, so I'm in the meetings and I'm sharing, and someone comes up to me in the meeting afterwards, and they're like, "Veronica, I'm so sorry these things are happening to you, but this is what I did when I was disabled, because I just didn't know what to do with myself, because I'm like, this can't be happening again." I was pretty much devastated. So I go home, and I don't want to take the suggestion that he gave me, that he got into little projects around the house. That's what he said. And so I sit down in my little office, and I write a letter to God, and I pour my heart out, and I cry. I wind up in a ball on the floor, crying. And then when I get done crying, I get up, I take that letter, I put it on my desk, and I take that suggestion, because really that's how I learned to live my life. It helps me. Like, people help me, and I help other people. It always goes back and forth. So I start going through little projects, and I come across a box. And when I open the box, there they are, all my books in manuscript, and that one book 1 that needs to be revised. And it totally overwhelms me. So I go back to the meetings, and I'm like, I wrote all these books, and I don't have the patience or the willingness to do all this work. And there was someone in that meeting who I have such a great deal of respect for in recovery. And a lot of people know him in this area. And he talked to me, and he encouraged me. He said, "Veronica, all you have to do is start that first page, and the rest will come to you." So I went home, I took that suggestion, and I started that first page, and it opened the door for me to refocus on my heart's desire to connect with people who struggled from all walks of life in a big way. I remembered that commitment I made to my higher power all them years ago, that when I was in my 50s, that I would edit the books. I was now in my 50s, right? Then I also now had enough education that I could edit the books. I would have some help from my daughter Carly, and so I dove in. I took book 1. I revised it with pictures of me communicating from bridges and crossroads in life. So I'm talking to you, I'm talking to God in the pictures, or I'm contemplating life. And then I took book 1 and I divided it into volumes. I thought about all of my years in recovery. I've been here 27 years. At that time, it was like 22, whatever that was. And I picked the very simple things that have been helping me. And I built them into recovery journals that other people could co-write. So then Carly and I edit the books. We did all the photography. We published them and started the uphill road. And it's an uphill road to get them into circulation. And then that's where I went back. Last year, I launched a series from Eagleville Hospital, where I'm 27 years alumni to. And I can't even begin to tell you, when I stood there last year on that stage, and it's a really big rehab. I had to do 2 things. I can't even begin to tell you. I sat on the other side. I didn't think, like they said, when I was there all them years ago, someone came in, and, like me, and they said, look to the left and look to the right. One of you is going to die, and one of you is going to suffer the horrors of addiction. One of you is going to make it. I didn't like what they said. But I will tell you, I didn't think I was lucky enough to die. I surely didn't think I was going to make it. And I figured I was the one who was going to suffer the horrors of addiction. So to be standing there on that stage 27 years later, it was a feeling inside that I couldn't even in a million years express. So from that point onward, I just lost my train of thought. But
so you were up there in front of all of these people who were in the rehab program at that moment, and so they were looking up at you like as a role model, as like, this is something that I can, if I work really hard, I can try to achieve that.
Yeah, well, the thing is, at one point with the ladies, they started passing boxes of tissues around because, I have to tell you, so because of my head injury, everything I do takes triple effort. I told you I would sit in that box for one test for 4 hours. I would get 100, and I would get all of the extra credit. I had a 4.0 my entire degree. I didn't even know I was that smart. But when I was standing up there with my train of thought, I built with my story. I put props in there. So it wasn't just me telling my story. It was, I had built like a little stage. So I had chains, I still have it. I was actually trying to get Chattanooga State to have somebody film it for me, so I still have difficulties sometimes, and it's like, I'd like to get this and put it up there, but anyways, so
wow, that's incredible to be up there. And
so from there, at that event, I gave out over 200 copies of the 31-day recovery journal, and then that just launched it. And then I came back here, and I had already made the connection there in Silverdale Detention Center, because the thing is, with the books, I gave them to friends in recovery, to professionals, and to treatment centers, just to start getting this out there. And I've been doing all this footwork for it, because I don't leave. I haven't gotten a promoter and all this other stuff. I haven't gone that route, because it's like, well, first off, I don't have the money to do that. I don't have a team. I have a will inside of me for a person. I'm an advocate for any person in recovery, or that wants to live a different way, and chooses to, or even if they don't. So because the books are for any person, that just drives me. So I was able to get the books into Silverdale, and then here at the Methadone Clinic, I was able to get the books in there, and I teach a class down there once a week, and I also give them the book there as well. It's my hopes now, because the books took off there in Silverdale, trying to get them on the commissary there, so that, so that the inmates, people can buy the books for themselves.
Right.
Because there's no class in there or anything. The books, you can use them separately or together. You don't have to use them, there's no rhyme or reason to it. I designed that series for any question you have or any comment you have that you think that, oh, I can't, you can. The book one is visuals. So you don't write in it. The 3 volumes is recovery journals, but that little book is the sum of all the meditations in all of the volumes. And I designed it to be when you're troubled, okay, when you're bothered, you thumb through it. It's like a pattern breaker. May have nothing to do with what's going on with you, but it's a distraction. And that's all we need sometimes, is that one little moment. And the premise of that was, when I first got clean and sober, you had 2 minutes to talk sense to me, or else I was gone. And that's how that whole book is written. So one page has nothing to do with the next page. You can read it from front to back. You can thumb through it. You can go through the table of contents under the headings hurting, hard-headed, or too busy, and go through that way. You can just look at the pictures. I want you to look at the pictures. It's a puzzle. So look at the pictures. See if I'm talking to you. Notice the bridge that's behind it. Notice there's a crossroad. These are things that are symbols in our recovery. In our paths, in our roads, we have to cross bridges, we come to crossroads.
Right.
We have difficulties, or we talk to God, we contemplate, we get mad at people. So all them expressions are in, are shown, in there. And I felt strongly to put the pictures because, people won't know me, but to identify with a face instead of, okay, here's just some words and here's some pictures. It's like, no, I'm a real person and I'm talking to you. So I'm reaching across them pages. So through the journaling, you're writing the other half of the book. So it's like, hey, here's how I feel and here's how I was thinking. Now you get to write how, you can add to that meditation. You can build your own on the other side, and together we are writing a book. And the thing that I love about the book is that the book is designed for all economic classes, all genders, all cultures, all races, and all beliefs. And the way that happens is because you get to write the other half of that. Okay, so you don't have to agree with me, but for whatever we're going through in life and whatever them things are, we can be friends. And we can see each other's point of view, and we can walk down the road, and we can write a book together. And I look forward to other people that believe in different things writing the other half, because I'm still who I am. I made sure I had a few other people help me go through the book to make sure that if I'm asking you questions, it's saying higher power. Okay, and when I'm talking, I always say just God. I'll say God, or I'll say higher power. I intermix them, but that's me talking. So you talk and you say what you want, and then you sign at the first page on page 7. You sign and it says, "I dedicate the book." And I say I dedicate it to God. You're given space. You dedicate it to whoever you want to. And then the party begins. Then now you can build them journals. You can build your own series. And that's the last thing I would like to say about that series is the back page you sign. It says congratulations on your one-of-a-kind book from their heart. And it encourages you to put it in a special place where you can see it and go on to the next volume. And you can do the volumes over and over again. I still have like 8 books in manuscript, besides the ones that are already out there. I don't see them getting edited for another few years because I've got so much work to do with these. But a person, it's a now series. So say if you did volume 1 and then you did 2 and 3, you could come back and do volume 1 again, because you will always be in a different spot. So them questions, like, some of them I read, and I was where I was at 20 years ago. And when I read it today before class and I get my lesson together, I'm like, oh, I needed that, And I'm like, so it's something that it keeps you into the present, and it helps that way. So I'm so excited. I look at each day. Now, I said when I was in my 50s, I would edit the books, and this is how I would finish out my life, bringing these books mainstream and doing things like I'm doing now. Because
Yeah.
that's part of the process is the doors aren't open. People don't know who you are,
Uh-huh.
you know, and you have to, you know,
Right.
you have to come out of your shell all over again and say, hey, you know, and you say, I have 27 years clean and sober. And you're like, well, you know, I'm not in what is recovery? People are like,
Right.
I don't even know what that is. It's like recovery, you get my car out of a ditch or what? You know, and it's
Yeah.
like, so you have to explain to people like, you know, I'm a recovering person.
Uh-huh.
You know, and, you know, but recovery from what? From anything, from whatever you get into.
Uh-huh.
So if it's, my thing is, you know, is it from a disability? Is it from a medical issue? Did you just get cancer? Are you in hospice? What's your, you know, what's your issue? What's your, maybe you're a happy person and you just want to write a book. You don't have to have anything wrong, you know? So it's something to where I am happy to be able to, reach that person. Like when I'm down at the methadone clinic, I can't change your road. That may be your road for the rest of your life. Maybe you may be on medicine assisted treatment. I don't know, but I do know that we can still reach our hearts. And because when I was a junkie, when I was out there, I felt my daughter's love. I felt that day. So we're still there, but we don't know what anybody's walk is. It's not for us to say what their recovery is and how is, but it is our responsibility to love one another. Okay? Just where we're at. And if where you're at is a devastating place and you don't want to come out of that, I am still responsible to be as kind as I can to you. And maybe kick you in the butt too. I mean, you know, I'll be honest with you. It's like, you know, we help each other the ways that we do.
Yeah. So what do you see? What are your dreams for the next few years or so? What would you like to see happen?
Well, of course, I have a vision with this where I'd like to see things going. For now, my focus is, you know, to get the series out into mainstream, to do some articles, you know, let people know that this is here, and because I will spend every day that I have just doing my best to reach people. So I don't put the money into advertising or anything. I put it into the person's hands. You know, it's like if you know, my friends and people tell me all the time, stop giving everything away. It's like, okay, and then what do I do? Here's a book. Here's a book. I did it the other day. It's like, I can't, it's like, I don't think, you know, that will take care of itself. But my focus is, you know, I'm going to get it out into the mainstream. I have a vision of, you know, schools, some different things that are further down the road. And believe me, I have to pull it in because I will try to manifest that. But the thing is, like with RTC, the lesson with that was I had too much.
Yeah.
So I'm older, hopefully a little wiser. So I'll keep it to this for this next year, establish,
Right.
You know, get strong in what I'm doing, headed, and I'm excited doing it. Like I was excited to do the Hands Across the Bridge. I can't tell you, holding everybody's hand, spanning that bridge and saying the Serenity Prayer. I've been saying it for 27 years in meetings and with, you know, and at home and different places. So to have that unity and have it, you know, people in recovery from all walks, you know, it's not just one thing. It was, you know, different institutions, different people. It was family. It was everybody because it's a family thing, recovery. And the main thing that I would like to say also is, you know, when people come into recovery or their family members or different people, you know, we need to understand that as long as we're still breathing, we're always going to have a choice. So things might be going good for 5 years, 5 months, 5 days. It doesn't change that we still need to do them same things. You know, I've been in recovery for 27 plus years now. I still have a sponsor. I still go to meetings. I still write. I still interact. And I haven't touched a drug or alcohol in all them years. Wow. So what's my problem? No, it's not a problem. This is a way of life that I choose to live. But yes, I could make a bad choice tomorrow. You know, I still have problems, so I know how to take care of myself. So we need to understand really as a society that, you know, it's not that, you know, I'm not saying whether anybody's sick. That's not for me to say. It is, you know, as long as we're still breathing, we can choose a road of recovery. No matter what that age is, and no matter how long that's been. And that's for any person. for whatever your issue may be.
Right.
So,
Right. So where can people find you? Where can they reach you?
I have a shirt now that says recoveryjournals.org.
I know, I saw it the other day.
Yeah. So, that's the website, recoveryjournals.org. And that's an interactive website. So we're building that as well to where it has my story up there. It has like little summaries of the classes that I've been doing. And that is from Journal 1. We're going cover to cover. They're just little snippets. You can pause it and answer the questions. Then I have a blog up there that I try to keep up with at least once a week. It's just that there's too much work to do everything. And as things grow, that will grow too. So, but yeah, they can reach me there. They can get all of the books. They can start. I will say you begin the series. This is very, very important. You begin the series with Journal Volume 1, long-term or short-term. I'm going to tell you, long-term. Short-term is good for institutions, or if that has a place, like that one was really for institutions for a fast turnover, like a detox or something, just enough to capture a person, and then they have to go and get the rest of the books, because the volumes are a lifetime series. But you start with Volume 1. But having said that, if you came across Volume 3, you could do Volume 3, because one book doesn't have to, you don't need to have done one to do the other, but I'm telling you, you want to start with Journal Volume 1.
And you have a YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, you can find any of the videos also up on YouTube.
Okay, and they're on your website.
They're on the website.
And we'll link to that.
If you just went under Veronica Slack, just put my name in there, I'm sure.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll put links to your website and anything else you want to send me. If you have like Instagram or Facebook or anything like that, you can send me that, and I'll put all of that in the show
everything's
notes.
under Veronica Slack. So if anybody ever wants, even on Facebook, Veronica Slack,
Okay. Yeah. Good. Well, is there anything else that you want to say? Any words of encouragement or anything before we wrap up?
Well, yeah, I would say this. In my story, I always say that when I was in that transition, I felt inside like I was a diamond in the rough. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had a desire to want to live differently. So to people, I would say, we are all diamonds in the rough, being refined in some way. So no matter what we come from, no matter what gender, what culture, what race, we all are on this road together. So as long as you're still breathing, you can always choose a road of recovery.
Good. I like
and
that.
I've enjoyed this.
I've enjoyed this too. This has been great. Thank you. I'm so glad that we met.
Me too.
So, all right.